A hearty good evening to everybody.
Councilmember Staggers.
Present.
Anderson.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Jamison.
Here.
Karski.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Our city council meetings with an invocation. We're very, very pleased to have Amanda Novotny here tonight. She is the president of Siouxland Free Thinkers. What we'd ask you to do is, and then after Amanda is done, we will remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Amanda, welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, citizens of Sioux Falls, and everyone present for this opportunity to provide an inspirational opening to your meeting. Often at this time, you are asked to bow your heads. Instead, I ask you to lift your head up and look around. Turn your attention to this room, a room that has heard countless discussions, frustrations, and successes, a room where important decisions regarding your city are routinely made. Now take a moment to soak in the presence of all the men and women in this room, gathered here at this time and place to engage in their civic duty to contribute and work towards creating a better community. Think of all the hundreds and thousands of others who are also affected by the ideas shared here. Let all voices be heard and understood equally. It is also often customary to read from a book during an invocation, and tonight will be no different. I'll be sharing a quote from J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, in which Albus Dumbledore said, "Differences of habit and language are nothing at all if our aims are identical and our hearts are open. Although our differences may be many, we are bound together in similarity as members of the human species. As humans, we have the capacity to appreciate and thank each other, to utilize compassion and reason in our decision-making. I ask those present to join me in showing gratitude to the men and women that serve the great city of Sioux Falls. We need only to look to each other for guidance and work together to overcome any challenges we face." Thank you.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, a hearty good evening to everybody, and it's a great crowd at a city council meeting. You don't see this in many cities across America where you have this many people engaged in their government. So thank you very much for being here tonight. I also have the privilege as part of this meeting to read a special proclamation, and this one is a special one, as you folks will attest. Welcome. Would you mind? Please, ma'am, would you come up? Thank you. Thank you. The proclamation reads, whereas each year on August 7th, Americans should pause to remember and honor the brave men and women who were either wounded on the battlefield or paid the ultimate sacrifice with their lives. The Purple Heart is awarded to any member of the U.S. Armed Forces who has been wounded or died as a result of a wound in battle. Whereas the medal now known as the Purple Heart actually began as the badge of military merit. On August 7, 1782, in Newburgh, New York, General George Washington ordered the creation of a badge of distinction for enlisted men and non-commissioned officers. Whereas the badge of military merit was redesigned and became known as the Purple Heart. This new design was issued on the bicentennial of George Washington's birth, and General Douglas MacArthur was the first recipient of the Purple Heart. Whereas during the early period of the American involvement in World War II, The Purple Heart was awarded for both wounds received in action against the enemy and for meritorious performance of duty. With the establishment of the Legion of Merit by an act of Congress, the practice of awarding the Purple Heart for meritorious service was discontinued by Executive Order 9277, dated December 3rd, 1942. This executive order authorized the award only for wounds received. Whereas, on this day in our city, the city of Sioux Falls, it is our patriotic duty to remember and to recognize those people willing to serve our country no matter the price. Now, therefore, I, Mike Huther, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, I do hereby proclaim August 7th, 2014 as Purple Heart Day in Sioux Falls. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Council will now move to the consent agenda. Any motions, changes?
Move to approve Anderson.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve our consent agenda, seconded by Councilor Karski. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes. Excuse me.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. We'll now move to our regular agenda. Council, any changes to tonight's agenda?
Move approval, Ruffing. Second, Anderson.
Councilor Rolfing has made a motion to approve our agenda tonight, and it was seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Another part of our city council meeting is the public input portion of the evening. You can come up and you can speak on any topic that you feel is important. We'd ask you if it's an agenda item later on, we'd ask you to wait for that particular agenda item. But otherwise, come on up, introduce yourself. All we ask is just tell your name to the people of this town, and if you could keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, we'd appreciate that. Welcome. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. There was a gentleman that was going to give a presentation.
Introduce yourself to the...
Oh, I'm sorry. You say. I'm I.L. Weiderman from Sioux Falls. Sorry about that. There was a gentleman going to make a presentation here a few weeks ago about the event center, and he had forgotten one of his instruments to make that presentation. When he got ready to make the presentation a week or so later, he was arrested, so he couldn't make it. He was lost in that great big monstrosity of a jail here in town for 6.5 hours, and he was supposed to be on a PR. Nobody knew where he was at for 6.5 hours until the meeting was over. Then he was able to PR out. I don't understand that. As I've told a number of you before, I've been threatened a number of times for showing up at this meeting and speaking against things that I didn't believe were right. I believe this has become a scare tactic of this administration to scare people from coming up here and talking at this podium. I'm not scared of anybody. I don't care who you are. I will get up here and say something if I think it's wrong. This scare tactic has to stop. And another thing that I found out today, the people that have civil matters that they get cited for, if they want to appeal it, they have to post a $350 bond. I think that's absurd. There's a lot of people that get a citation. They can't afford to come up with $350. to appeal something that they don't think is right. And the other thing is, as the head of the administration, you personally told the city they had plenty of funds, nothing was going to have to be cut with the event center. First thing that's cut is handicap transportation. That is wrong. If the city has so much money, let them keep with the paraplegic transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiderman. And folks, normally I don't do this, but on behalf of the council, I've only been here 4 years, a little over 4. We've never turned anybody away from speaking at this meeting, and I don't think there's ever any plans to do that. Everybody has the opportunity to engage the council. The only limitations that have ever been put on anybody coming forward is that, again, we've asked them to just give their name, just so we have that for the record. And then secondly, we've only asked that they keep the comments to 5 minutes or less, which generally people just adhere to, but we also will give additional time if we believe that they're speaking on behalf of a group of folks. And then if there's one other thing that we've maybe asked on some of these evenings is we've asked to have separate topics to make the meetings more productive, that you don't repeat the same thing over and over again. But otherwise, and again, I'm not going to counter Mr. Weiderman because he's been a loyal person who has spoken on behalf of this body. But I will let everybody know there is absolutely no one that is turned away from speaking in front of the city council. And in fact, if there's anybody fighting to have you speak in front of the city council, it's this city council. They want to hear from you. And yes, it's this mayor, and we'll continue to do so. Is there anybody else who wants to speak?
However, Mr. Mayor,
yes,
if I may,
Councilor.
I think something needs to be said at this point about threats, if you will, if that's what I would call it, or in implication of saying that we would have somebody picked up,
yes,
so that they couldn't be here. There is no way that's happened. At least I don't believe you did that. I know I didn't, and I can't believe that unless you have evidence of something like that you can bring with you, please don't bring that kind of whatever you want to call it to this board, this body, because I won't sit back and take it.
Councilor Ruffing, and again, folks, we normally, I apologize, we normally don't engage after someone gives public testimony. We normally don't do that. But in this particular case, I need you folks to understand, absolutely, you're all invited to speak in front of this body. The council fights for it. I fight for it, and will continue to do that. Would anybody else like to engage the council? Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Penny Olson.
Thank
I am
you.
part of a committee that is speaking for those that maybe can't speak for themselves.
Thank you.
And it is involving paratransit. And if you think this is redundant after the previous statement,
No, absolutely not.
Okay. I have a map here, and I'm just going to show it because I didn't make copies. We don't have a budget line in the group that I work with, so we try to keep our costs fairly inexpensive. But we made a map of what is proposed for paratransit. It's going to be cut, and it's up for your discussion, and I believe that will be next week. And I actually kind of mapped it out. This is about where paratransit will be after you make the changes. And I'll put it out here for you to see as well. And if you notice that paratransit will no longer...
Ma'am, what we'll do is we'll actually put it up on the screen, and so you can continue to engage the public, and then everybody can see. Okay?
That would be great.
So just continue on, please.
Great. And if you will notice that when it goes south, it's going to affect a lot of the apartments, and you know, most of you know where those apartments are. There's a lot of people there that are not going to be able to use paratransit. They're not going to be able to get to the event center. They're not going to be able to get out to Sanford. There's no route out there. So we're just feeling that this is just wrong. This is just wrong. They should be able to find the money. They talk about increasing the fares for paratransit and for the bus. And it seems if we could just have better awareness of how important public transportation is. Most cities use this all the time, and I know that Sioux Falls is not really utilizing our transit system. And it would be so much more effective if it would. And maybe if money could get dumped into a small portion of just getting out there and making the public, hey, you know, look, ride for a month for free. Maybe it would get better utilized, and that money would easily pay for the amount of money it's going to take to keep paratransit going. I was a social worker for the state for over 20 years, and I worked with individuals that were disabled and elderly and how much they needed paratransit. And family members, church members, doesn't always happen. They're alone in the world, you know, and they don't have a way to get around. And I would just say that we really need we need to continue to keep the paratransit, but above and beyond all that, the 211 helpline has identified transportation as the #1 unmet need in our city. And it seems with our budget, we should be able to do something. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Folks, would anybody else want to engage the council? Oh, sir, welcome.
Council, Mayor, I'm Michael Christensen, and thank you for letting me come speak with you today. I need help with bicycling in Sioux Falls, and I have 2 messages for you, Council and Mayor, tonight. First is on-street riding, if done predictably, visibly, safely, and courteously, is far safer than sidewalk riding. Sidewalk riding can be safe if the rider rides at pedestrian speeds so that it's easier to meet the legal requirements to stop at all intersections and yield to all traffic in the intersection. At pedestrian speeds, it's also easier for the rider to acknowledge the reality that at every intersection and every driveway, there could be cars coming from up to 4 directions, with drivers in them that are looking on the road for cars, not on the sidewalks. City government must stop believing that sidewalk riding is safer than on-street riding. Any discomfort with this message due to driver inconvenience, driver or rider incompetence, or anything else is a fear you must resolve for yourself. I pledge to you I am here to help, but it must be resolved. Message 2, this city experiences a fatal car-bike crash roughly every 3 years. I'm sure every time this happens, the question is raised, what is the city doing to improve safe bicycling? Currently, the response has been to defer the question to Sam the planner. To be sure, Sam is great and the information he provides about safe riding is solid, but Sam has done his job. In the next 12 months, you will be presented with a 2015 bike plan and you will likely approve it. 7 years ago, Sam wrote and you approved the 2007 plan. It's time to open the plan. Oh, here's my name. I sit on a lot of transportation planning meetings. I've helped form a lot of plans. It's time to stop planning and start implementing. I propose my city government do the hard work so that the question, what is the city doing to improve bicycling safety, can be answered like this. We are educated. We have key traffic engineers, police officers, and planners that have been through training and understand what visible, predictable, safe, and courteous riding looks like. We understand the predictable, repeatable, and avoidable physical hazards of sidewalk riding and the legal hazard as well. This knowledge is reflected in the information we provide the public, the facilities we build on the streets, and the traffic and roadway plans that we develop. We educate. Together, our police, planning, traffic engineering, health, and parks department provide 3 free opportunities each season through 3 different community centers for adults to learn how to ride safely on the streets, and we have similar age-appropriate classes for children. Also, we've produced a series of PSAs that we refresh annually and release each bike month, showing our expectations for safe, law-abiding riding and safe, law-abiding driving. We enforce. Each year since the previous fatality, we've issued more tickets to drivers for crosswalk, sidewalk, stop sign, and texting violations, and more tickets for riders for crosswalk, stop signs, and wrong way riding violations. We believe this has contributed to less car, bike, and car pedestrian collisions. We provide a safe and functioning on-street riding environment. All of our on-street bicycle facilities, sharrows, and bike lanes take into consideration the very real danger of encouraging on-street riders to ride to the right of potentially right-turning drivers. We're 3 years into a 5-year program to convert all actuated traffic signals to a new technology that will allow bicycles to be detected. When the program is complete, riders on low-volume neighborhood roads can expect to be able to safely cross higher-volume, higher-speed roads without exhibiting unpredictable red light running behavior to drivers. And finally, we make it clear through signage and other ways that predictable, visible, safe, and courteous riders are welcome on our roadways. Our mayor is engaged. Our mayor understands that the pursuit of happiness has a lot to do with mobility. Therefore, once a month, our mayor rides to work so that he better understands the roadway experiences of citizens that day after day use bicycles for transportation. Once a month, our mayor walks to work 1.5 miles on Minnesota Avenue so that he better understands the roadway experiences of citizens that day after day walk for transportation. Finally, our money is where the growth is. We recognize that the 2014 Long-Range Transportation Plan Market Research Survey shows a citywide increase from 1999 of 400% for bicycling and 500% for walking. Therefore, spending has risen accordingly for bicycling and walking related transportation needs, street, traffic engineering, planning, etc. Thank you for your 5 minutes or more. I invite council to engage me further on these matters at any later date. Thank you.
Mayo, thank you. And that was 5 minutes and 54 seconds. Welcome.
My name is Chris Parsley. I'm president of Falls Area Bicyclists, and
Chris.
I am working with Mike. I have a solution that I think the city should really seriously consider. Bicycle and pedestrian program managers are common in many U.S. cities, and along with other transportation planners and bicycling advocates, they're a critical part of creating a bicycle-friendly community. An analysis of 40 of the largest U.S. cities show that cities with bicycle and pedestrian staff have higher levels of bicycling than cities without any staff. Bicycling program managers institutionalize the consideration of bicycle accommodations throughout transportation departments and other relevant areas of government. Bicycle program managers direct planning efforts, they develop and implement projects, ensure design guidelines are being followed, improve bicycling-related policies. 80% of the cost of a bicycle and pedestrian coordinator can come from federal funds, such as the Surface Transportation Program or the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Improvement Program. So the city would only be on the hook for 20% of that person's salary. The Alliance for Bicycling and Walking surveyed the 50 largest U.S. cities to find out how many bicycle and pedestrian staff they employed. Of the 40 cities that responded, only 2 did not have any staff dedicated to bicycle and pedestrian issues. The cities with the largest bike staff were not the largest cities. Minneapolis was number 46, one of the smallest cities in the sample, yet they have 19 paid bicycle and pedestrian planners. Minneapolis has the largest bike staff in the country. It also has the second highest rate of bicycle commuting. What impact do bicycle and pedestrian staff have on bicycling levels? The U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey measures the percentage of workers who use the bicycle as their primary mode of transportation to work. Comparing staffing levels to the commuter data shows that larger bicycle and pedestrian staffs are correlated with higher bike commuter levels. The cities without any bike staff had the lowest average commuter share. A city with the size of four people on staff as bicycle planners, they saw a 10 times greater bicycle commuter share. Cities without any staff at all, you saw very minimal bicycle commuter share. This shows that cities that make a serious commitment to bicycle planning see a greater return on their investment than cities with fewer or no staff at all. Bike staff levels also correlate with overall bicycle friendliness. The League of American Bicyclists Bicycle Friendly Community Program has designated Sioux Falls 2 times in a row as a bronze bicycle friendly community, which is proof that we've been moving in the right direction. But to go further than bronze for a 3rd time, we need to invest in the 5 categories of bicycle friendliness: engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluation. Cities with large bicycle staffs are more likely to have accomplished more for bicycling in their communities than other cities. The most bicycle-friendly city in the sample was Portland, Oregon. They have a larger staff than everyone except Minneapolis. Their bike commuter share is 6%. The bike commuter share in the state of South Dakota is 1/2 of 1%. Without planning for bicycling, Sioux Falls transportation network is incomplete. Employing bicycle and pedestrian staff shows that our community is committed to a comprehensive transportation system that are critical in integrating bicycling into our city's plans and projects. Their impact is measurable. Bike commuting levels and bicycle-friendly community recognition patterns show that larger staff investments lead to better bicycling outcomes. The route to higher levels of bike friendliness is best planned through the combined efforts of the city having at least 1 staff member focused full-time on bicycle and pedestrian issues, bicycle advisory committees, and advocacy organizations such as Falls Area Bicyclists. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Folks, would anybody else want to engage the council? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Good evening. Scott Kuznicki, Sioux Falls resident. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for providing the public with this opportunity to provide you with input and to be a part of the process. What we've been talking about this evening with paratransit and bicycling is really a quality of life issue. And when we compare ourselves to other cities, we could measure all kinds of metrics. And I think one of the things that we want to look at is, why do businesses and people want to come to Sioux Falls? Part of the reason businesses want to come here is because they know that the tax structure in the state of South Dakota is advantageous. People come to Sioux Falls because they know that we have a low crime rate. But I think in order for us to be more competitive, we need to recognize what people are saying about the opportunities that paratransit presents for people that have limited mobility, and the opportunities that bicycling presents, simply because bicycling is a great way to get around. Now, I'm a traffic engineer, and I'm also a bicyclist, which is a frightening dichotomy. But those two things can work together. And I want to echo the comments that these 2 gentlemen presented to you this evening. And I hope that as a council, as you engage in the process of looking at the budget for the coming years, even if you can't do all of the things that they're asking for, there's nothing wrong with starting small. $25,000, $30,000, $50,000 dedicated to transportation improvements specifically related to bicycling, not just on street but off street as well, to improve the wayfinding, to make it easier for families and commuters to get around in Sioux Falls on a bicycle, is going to be something that will improve the quality of life in this city. And one of the things that this city has done just recently is on Main Avenue. You probably noticed the reduction in traffic lanes and the creation of some really interesting and exciting public spaces. And we are hoping, as a city, to engage people in their downtown, to engage people in their neighborhoods. And public spaces that everyone can use are a vital part of that. And so I encourage you as a city council, take it from a traffic engineer. Bicycling is important. And when it comes time to start funding it, I hope that you look at the plan and realize that it's a serious matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Mr. Weiderman, you certainly had the opportunity to engage the council. Are you asking to engage them again?
Yes, I am. Robert's Rules of Order does not forbid me from doing so.
If you could just wait, Mr. Weiderman, Council Chair, I'm going to defer to you. You are the council chair of this council. I know you do your best to try to represent them.
I will let you decide whether you would like Mr. Weilerman to continue to engage the council.
I don't see any reason why we should preclude him from one more time, Your Honor.
Mr. Weilerman, proceed.
Going by what you said for a rebuttal and the gentleman over there, I never inferred that anybody from the city council or yourself had anything to do with the nightmare that a friend of mine went through. But I have talked to Mr. Erpenbach previously about the threats that have been made to me personally, and numerous times. I even had to change my phone number because of threats I was getting. I'd be sitting here and that camera, somebody would call me and I'd have my phone on silent and it would say unknown. Well, I'd answer it, of course, and it was a threat. Why are you sitting at that so-and-so console? Thank you. But I just wanted to clarify that I never inferred that it was anybody from the city council.
Thank you, Mr. Weilerman. Thank you. Folks, is there anybody? Welcome. Nice to have you here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Stassen Barnes. I wrote a letter to Mike. Not used to speaking in front of people, but
you'll do fine.
I concur with the FAB president in hiring someone that's a professional city bike planner. But I did have a few ideas myself. I've lived in a lot of different cities in the United States. I've lived in Denver, Olympia, Washington, Bend, Oregon, some really bike-friendly cities. Woo. And they're doing things much better than we are here. And we certainly have some areas of improvement needed. I just have a few ideas. Some bike lanes, an arterial bike lane system within the city that is well planned and has wide, visibly marked bike lanes and signage. A lower speed limit on those streets. The streets need to be sort of a web that connects the center of the city to the bike trail from multiple routes. I'm envisioning a sort of compass with the center being downtown and multiple routes at each degree heading to the trail at the perimeter of the city. Number 2, increased bicycle awareness education and possibly this in the South Dakota DMV testing process. Driver's ed programs possibly. Maybe an ad campaign for bicycle safety, like a Share the Road campaign. Number 3, our bike trails are awesome. We ride them almost daily, but there's a lot of areas of improvement that would help with the city. We need to widen the bike trail to have 4 clearly marked lanes. And there should be a fast lane and a slow lane on each side. I'm so nervous. I'm sorry, I'm not a public speaker. This is new for me, but there are people riding 25 miles per hour on the bike trails, and there's kids weaving all over the bike trail, and it's just really dangerous for everyone involved. So I think 4 lanes would really help out. The trail needs to be open, all 20-some miles of it, during the summer months. When there's certain parts of it that are closed for construction, people are having to go off the bike trail and go into the streets, and it's really dangerous for everyone. I think if we expanded the bike trail to have routes that went to some of the neighboring cities or towns, Canton, Harrisburg, Brandon, T, some of the competitive cyclists would have a better place to go faster, and it'd be safer for everyone, that it would decrease the serious cyclist traffic on the main bike trail, and it would be fun, and it would be a good thing for the community. Another thing is adding roundabouts to Sioux Falls streets, like 26th Street, to break up traffic and make drivers pay more attention to the roads. Those are just a few suggestions. Thank you.
Did a good job, Katie. Thank you. Welcome. And folks, if there's anybody else who wants to speak, if you would just get in line, it just makes everything more productive and efficient. Welcome.
I don't have anything prepared.
Can you just tell us your name
my
first?
My name's Marilyn Zimmerman.
Thanks,
and
Marilyn.
another member of the Falls Area Bicyclists Committee and also, or club, and also on the bicycling committee with Sam, who I have to tell you guys, he has done a wonderful job. And I first want to reiterate the request for a full-time bicycle planner. And one of the reasons I think it would appeal to everyone, because you all have to be fiscally responsible and fiscally minded. It definitely is a great return on investment and a great community attraction for businesses. And bicyclists have a lot of money to spend, so if the city is friendly to bicyclists, we're going to come here, we're going to come to events. West Hall is now part of the city. He organized Ragbri for so many years. So there's a lot of really fiscally huge benefits to having a healthy and safe bicycling facilities. And I do want to commend the city, too, for having the beautiful bike trail that we have, and just, you know, former mayors and people years ago who set it up. I've lived in Sioux Falls for about 34 years, and I've seen it improve, and it's just definitely we're on the right track. So I just wanted to reiterate that it's good for the city, both safety-wise and fiscally-wise. So thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Well, great job. Thank you. Thanks so much for being here tonight. We appreciate the comments. We'll now move on to item number 24.
Item number 24 is a new 2014-15 retail malt beverage license for GL Management LLC, Woodlake Athletic Club, to be operated at 4600 South Tennis Lane. CUP not required, accessory alcohol, pending permits and final inspections per Fire, Health, and Building Services. Item 25 is a new 2014 retail wine license for GL Management LLC, Woodlake Athletic Club, to be operated at 4600 South Tennis Lane. CUP not required, accessory alcohol, pending permits and final inspections per Fire, Health, and Building Services. Item 26 is a transfer of 2013-14 retail malt beverage license, including video lottery terminals, from Sim & Sim Enterprises Incorporated, Jay's Wild Casino, 904 South Cliff Avenue, to Quan Holdings Incorporated, Crown Casino on Cliff, 904 South Cliff Avenue, with conditional use permit 2010-25, being approved on March 3rd, 2010, pending permits and final inspections for Fire, Health, and Building Services. Item 27 is renewal of a 2014-15 retail malt beverage license for Quan Holdings Incorporated, Crown Casino on Cliff, 904 South Cliff Avenue, pending permits and final inspections per Fire, Health, and Building Services. Item 28 is a new 2014 retail wine license, including video lottery terminals, for Quan Holding Incorporated, Crown Casino on Cliff, to be operated at 904 South Cliff Avenue, with conditional use permit 2010-25 being approved on March 3rd, 2010, pending permits and final inspections per Fire, Health, and Building Services. Item 29, transfer of 2014 retail liquor license, including Sunday sales certificate and video lottery terminals, from Shenanigans Pub Incorporated, Shenanigans Pub, 4001 West 41st Street, number 502, to Shenanigans Pub Incorporated, Shenanigans Pub, 1903 South Ellis Road, effective September 1st, 2014, or upon completion of construction. CUP not required, full service restaurant, pending permits and final inspections per Fire, Health, and Building Services. Item 30, transfer of 2014 retail liquor license, including Sunday sales certificate, from GMRI Incorporated, Red Lobster Restaurant, number 305, 3901 West 41st Street, to Red Lobster Hospitality LLC, Red Lobster, number 305, 3901 West 41st Street. CUP not required, full service restaurant.
Good evening, Jamie Palmer with licensing. Item 24 and 25 are for Woodlake Athletic Club. They're new license requests. However, I just want to point out that 20 plus years ago, that facility did have a license way back when. I just don't have the exact dates on that. So items 26, 27, and 28 are all for the same business. They are a transfer of the retail malt, a renewal, and a new wine license addition. So we have to do the transfer before we can do the renewal and the new license. Item 29 is a request because the business is moving from the Empire Mall. And so I just want to point out on that one that they need it to be contingent on September 1 or upon completion, because there's always things that come up with the construction that might delay their move a little. And then item 30 is just a change of corporate ownership. The day-to-day business operations will remain the same.
Thank you, Jamie. Council, any comments?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve these items, seconded by Councilor Karski. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski? Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 31.
Item 31 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Section 95.071B, ice rink fees of Chapter 95, Parks and Recreation of Title IX, General Regulations.
Don?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation. This is the second reading of the ordinance that would essentially authorize staff to be able to charge fees for the use of the Sioux Falls Ice and Recreation Center when it opens again on September 1st. If you remember, we had a contract in place prior to with Sioux Falls Sports to manage that facility, but since now the city is running that facility, we need to incorporate these rates so we can charge those fees. The other thing I'd share with you is, as a reminder, the fees that are on your screen before you are reflective of those that would mirror the Shields Iceplex. We have reviewed these proposed fees with the Ice Sports Association, and they concur that these would be reflective of the fees they plan to charge, which obviously are the proposed rates on the right-hand column. And so with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Folks, this is a second reading, so you actually have the opportunity to engage the council on this topic. Would anybody want to do that? Thank you. Council?
I'll move approval.
Councilor Rolfing?
Second, Erpenbach.
Councilor Rolfing has made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. Any discussion? Councilor Staggers?
Yes, Don, how long do we anticipate being in competition with them?
The proposed transition plan that we talked about in front of the council, I think it was last month, talked about being open through the end of November and then reevaluating the operations of the facility.
I just thought of this. I guess I'd like to move an amendment. I move that this ordinance, this would be at the end of the ordinance, that this ordinance expires November 30th, 2014.
Councilor Staggers has made a motion to adjourn this, that this would expire November 30th, 2014.
I'm going to second that just so we can discuss.
Very good. Councilor Staggers?
Well, I guess the reason I just thought of this proposed amendment is because we talked about this that one other meeting here, that we're going to have a brand new ice rink out there, and everybody seemed to think that, well, that's it for us. We're not going to be involved in this business anymore, and people were happy. But now it seems like this could extend on a little bit longer, and to prevent that from happening, we just simply had this ordinance expiring November 30th, 2014.
Councilor.
Mr. Carney, what this ordinance does basically is set the rates that we're going to charge so that they're not competitive with the new Shields Iceplex. Excuse me. By amending the ordinance this way, basically at that point we would be able to charge whatever we want. Isn't that kind of an unintended consequence of doing that?
Mm-hmm. Not sure I understand your question, Councilor.
Councilor, if you could maybe try that again. I could explain it, but Councilor, go ahead.
If we put a horizon on this ordinance that we're proposing here, saying that after this date the rates no longer apply, we would have to revisit it again, or you could charge, or any rate could be charged, correct?
I don't believe we'd be able to do that, and David could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but the council has to authorize the rates to be set for us to be able to charge. So if there are no rates, I don't believe that we would be able to charge anything. Yeah. But I'd defer to David possibly on that, because we wouldn't have a rate.
Couldn't charge
anything. They would be, I think.
Be free.
It'd be what?
It'd be free. as Don mentioned, Don, repeat it again. I don't want to speak on your behalf.
Yeah, I do not believe we'll be able to charge anything. It's because we wouldn't have a rate in place.
Well, no, you have one in now. You are increasing the current rate that you were charging, or don't you?
We currently don't have any rates because we don't have any indoor rates. The rates that we currently have are our outdoor rates, outdoor ice skating rink rates.
What were you charging last year?
The rates that we are charging are up on the board, the current rates on the left-hand column, but those are rates that were approved by the Parks and Recreation Board through the contract with Sioux Falls Sports. And so that contract has expired, and therefore, because the city is running it, just like our swimming pools, you have to set the rates.
Gotcha.
Or Don, could you just again explain, the council is approving these rates? The administrator.
Mr. Mayor.
Very good.
Could we recognize the attorney?
Sure.
He has looked it up now.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you for the time. At the end of this ordinance in Part H, it talks about the Director of Parks and Recreation, after the table you see in the resolution, may establish definitions, et cetera, and may adjust these rates to provide discounts, bonuses, incentives, and promotions to enhance park and recreation activities and facilities usage, as well as penalties, late fees, deposits, and pro rata fee policies. So I think in getting to what the aim of Councilor Staggers is trying to do, I think this more sets what the maximum could be, and the Director of Parks and Recreation by ordinance still has that flexibility. I think you could achieve your objective by merely demanding that the Parks Department come back in 4 months and revisit the issue again with the council, because I frankly wouldn't on the fly want to adjust this section along with the other sections tonight.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Don, you said that in November, if this all passed, that we would relook at this. Who is going to relook at it, and what is the proposed plan for the future beyond November?
Well, the thought would be that through the end of November, we'd evaluate the type of use that we've had, what are the revenues and expenditures, what are the investments that are needed in the facility, and then come back and provide a report on the status of that.
With that report, would there also be a recommendation, open, keep it open, close, change rates?
Yeah, I believe there would be, yes.
Councilor Staggers. I'm so sorry. Did anybody else have any comments? Councilor Urbanbach.
I would just say that I support the intent of Councilor Staggers' motion. I understand what he's trying to do, and I think Don hears us very clearly, but I also understand what the attorney's reading to us. So I guess I would say vote no on this, but that Don needs to very clearly understand that this group wants to hear about it in November, and we really aren't too excited about making this thing live any longer than that. So that would be my comment. Can't speak for the group, but support what you're doing.
Before I go to Councilor Staggers, Councilor Staggers.
Well, Councilor Urbanbach, I don't think you can send a clearer message that we don't want this by voting for this amendment. So I would encourage, if you really do not want us to be in the ice business anymore, to vote for this amendment, to send a very clear message.
A roll call vote, please.
And we are voting on the amendment.
On the amendment.
On the proposed amendment.
Would you repeat it, the amendment?
I couldn't hear some of it, but it's on the tape. If Mr. Staggers.
Do you want me to say it?
Councilor Staggers, would you mind?
This would be at the very end of the ordinance, and it would simply say, this ordinance expires November 30th, 2014. That's it.
A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
No.
Urbanbach?
No.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
No.
Kiley?
No.
Rolfing?
No.
That's failed 3-5. We now have the second reading still on the table. Any further discussion? Councilor Karski.
I just want to echo what Councilor Urbanbach stated before. You know, when we're passing this ordinance, we're setting the rates that can be charged purely as a contingency or until we can decide what is going to happen to this facility. There is not a great taste, from what I know, for keeping this facility open. So this is a short-term Band-Aid, and just we need to have this brought back to the council with the plan for this old ice building.
Thank you. Councilor Erickson.
I would echo what Councilor Karski said, and the other thing is come September and October, we're going to kind of know where the ice complex is at. That I don't think we need to wait till November 25th to be talking about this. I know that's Thanksgiving time. We need to be having this conversation, watching how the facility is taking shape so we can put this to rest at that time. I've talked to some families that are for it, some families that are against it. But I really have a hard time keeping this facility open to subsidize our surrounding communities that want to use this facility. Our dollars need to be spent for the city of Sioux Falls, and so I think that we've all said our message, and just really be watching this and hope that we can have a clear understanding come October time and not wait till the end of the month. We're going to know what's going to take place.
A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 32.
Item 32 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property north of East 69th Street and west of South Southeastern Avenue from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential and RS Single Family Residential Districts to the RA1 Apartment Residential and RD2 Townhome Residential Districts, including conditions as allowed in Section 160.650E, placing limitations on which form can be used within the RD2 Townhome Residential District, petition number 2014-520, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval with conditions.
Michael.
Good evening. I'm Mike Cooper with City Planning and Building Services. This item tonight is brought to us by Brady Hyde, representing Whisper Ridge South Development as the applicant. The property is located on the north side of East 69th Street and west of Southeastern Avenue. The site is approximately 26 acres in size. The purpose of the rezoning is to construct a combination of multifamily, townhomes, and twin homes on this property. This is actually an update of current zoning that was approved in about 2005 by a previous owner of this property. Recently, the City Council approved zoning along the north side of 69th Street for a multifamily development. As part of that discussion, we brought in this property owner to make sure that these zoning changes and land use developments were being done concurrently. And so tonight we have a recommendation for you that came from the Planning Commission hearing. As we've discussed this with the applicant, we had some good input, not only at the Planning Commission meeting, but also with city staff from existing twin home owners on the north side of this proposed rezoning. And we have a good representation here tonight of those folks. And if I could kind of summarize the issues that we've talked with those neighbors about, that we've tried to address with this proposed rezoning. Number one was concern about with families coming into this new development area with a higher density, that there may be a need for a separate playground area, and the developer has agreed to provide a playground development as part of their proposed rezoning. Another big concern was drainage. We hear a lot about drainage about every council meeting when we're talking about land use development. We have issues with drainage. And if we could put the slide up there. So we've talked, let's go back to the, there we go. So we've talked at length about drainage. Along the south side of the existing twin homes is where the stormwater drainage is designed to extend to the east. So it would flow, it currently flows south off the existing twin homes, and it's directed to the east. There's a major stormwater detention area on the east side of Tanner, and then it extends farther east past Southeastern Avenue. So the proposed rezoning obviously is still undeveloped. The drainage pattern hasn't been established. But as we've said to you and to the citizens in the past, prior to any development on this property, it has to go through a very extensive review by our stormwater engineering department to meet all the standards that we have. So the drainage will be addressed. It will not be a negative impact from this development, whether it's zoned today or how it's been rezoned or proposed to be rezoned for the future. Another concern was buffering. With the proposed twin homes that would be adjacent to the existing twin homes, there was a suggestion, could we add additional buffering either through berming or landscaping? Well, because of the drainage pattern that I talked about, that would not be feasible to put a berm along there, because that would disrupt the flow of the drainage. So again, the proposed applicant has agreed to put in additional landscaping along the back lots of those twin homes, adjacent to the back lots of the existing twin homes. The next concern that we've heard is traffic. And if we could go back to the development plan. This subdivision has in place prior to and still in the future, as part of their roadway plan, that Tanner will extend south to 69th Street. That will be the collector street. And then there'll be another street that will extend east to Southeastern. And it's shown on the exhibit there as Jackson Street. So we have, within our major street plan and within our subdivision requirements, that there'll be 2 additional major roadways that will extend out to 69th Street and to Southeastern. Now, could people potentially take Tanner going north? Yes, that's certainly a possibility, but as with any large development, what we do is we plan for the long-term street network. The last thing that we talked about was how is this zoning change, this higher density development, going to impact our property values? And that's another, concern that we hear a lot about as a city council and as a planning department. We've gone through other zoning changes with you where that has been brought up. And so, as I've said to the people, we cannot regulate the cost of housing, the value of housing. What we try to do is look at compatibility in terms of land use. We have a compatibility index that we use. And in this case, we have existing twin homes that would be buffered with new twin homes. And then the RD2 would be the townhomes. The developers indicated that they're looking at probably up to 8-unit buildings. And then the RA1 is the multifamily, which would provide up to 12-unit buildings. So we've tried to develop that transition of uses from the highest density along 69th Street back to the existing twin homes. So the compatibility is what we try to use to manage, the impact on existing development. So having said all that, that's kind of where we're at. The Planning Commission has recommended approval. The developer has agreed to put the twin home buffer in, agreed to put in the additional landscaping, the play structures. We will scrutinize this in terms of drainage, and with the street plan that we've identified, that is being designed to accommodate the long-term traffic impacts of this area as it builds out. So with that, I will stop.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Folks, again, second reading, so you have the opportunity to engage the council if you'd like. If anybody would want to speak, come on up. Welcome.
Hi, my name's Diane Sauer, and I am a resident out there. And I, too, am kind of not used to doing this, but I am concerned. And it's been a lot we've talked about out there. I don't feel we've been given enough information except for what Mr. Cooper just, said to us now. But the thing that I'm really concerned about is the water keeping it away from our twin homes, if it's going to flow, be right behind us. And the thing that bothers a lot of us, especially the ones on the south side, is that if we get a really bad downpour and all these apartment buildings or the 8plexes or whatever they have besides the twin homes, if they're going to be on a slab, there's going to be no basements, there'll be no sump pumps, and that is concerning to me. I lived in Fargo, and I moved here to get away from the water, and guess what? Here I am in the midst of it again. But with no basements going to be over there, as I understand it, that's the understanding we have. Our sump pumps are going to run like crazy. And if the electricity goes off, then we're going to have all the water in our basements. And this is one thing, because I took pictures of it when we had that rain, and it was a lot of water back there. And it was starting to come up really close to our, my sump pump was going constantly. There was no stopping. And if we get another downpour, or say a couple days, or the electricity goes off, we're sunk. So this is something I just want to make sure that you are aware of. And I know you have your departments that work on that stuff, but being I've lived in Fargo and been in the midst of it, and I took stuff out of my basement for 2 years in a row because we had dikes in our streets and everything. So I am probably a little more afraid than anybody else. But I just wanted to kind of bring this to your attention and give you some of our feelings as residents. Okay?
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Folks, anybody else want to engage the council tonight? Very good. Council? Yes, Councilor Erickson? Oh. Okay. Folks, if you want to, please just come on up. Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Rosemary Murphy, and I'm a homeowner at Whisper Ridge. And I know you all have a tough job here tonight, and I do appreciate your service. But please keep in mind the homeowners of Whisper Ridge in making your decision tonight. We all made decisions to purchase our homes based on the current zoning at the time, which was single-family homes and twin homes. And we all made our decision to do that based on the zoning at the time of the property that was adjacent to our property. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? And it's okay if you do. Very good. Councilor Erickson.
Just a quick question, Mr. Cooper. I don't know which slide it shows with the drainage going down the back. I understand the drainage issue and don't understand everything about it, but I know having water in your basement stinks. It's awful. Where it's coming through, is it a culvert? Is it just a little ditch? What does that look like where it's heading to the east?
It will be a drainage swale, so it'll be above ground. And there's also a sump pump collection system that is underground that sump pumps would connect to. So there's an above ground drainage swale, and then there's an underground sump pump collection system.
Okay, and then my other question is heavens forbid something happens, we get these crazy rains like we've had the last few years, we have these awful rainstorms. What happens if it can't hold the capacity? What happens? Who's on the hook? I mean, we're voting on this and we're talking with you saying we don't want the water, you don't want the water going in their house either. We all understand that, but what happens? What happens if something fails, water goes in their basement? What happens?
And we would be having the same discussion without the rezoning. Let's just say we left it at single family. We would be having that same discussion. What happens to the drainage? Because the impact is going to be about the same. And as I said earlier, We have our design standards for stormwater. Yes, there could be events that exceed that, but we have to have some type of a threshold that we can design for. With our stormwater detention ponds, it gives us a lot more capacity to handle those big events. And as I said earlier, you know, that property that we're considering tonight for rezoning is still unimproved. So there really is no drainage system that's been designed down there. There's still kind of that farmland look to it. So this will actually improve. Any kind of development will give a much better defined drainage pattern than what we have today. So, but we have the capacity to allow for those bigger events. With this detention pond, and then there was also one, if you go back to the side-by-side, there's also the CN on the left side of the map will be another stormwater detention. So there'll be about 3 different directions that we can accommodate for the stormwater drainage.
Councilor Stagers.
Yeah, I have a similar question that Christine had. It seems like that the city, you know, we're always trying to be preventive. But then we do have these instances that do take place. And is there any provisions in the city, or do other cities in effect kind of say, hey, look, you're going to get punished for this water for happening that way? Is there, besides being preventive, but also trying to punish for during normal circumstances, you know, not abnormal situations, but, you know, somewhat normal situations, all the water starts coming in on their homes. Is there any punishment that can be done to a developer or contractor or whatever? Or does it just go to court and sue and lose money?
I think we have our city ordinances that you've adopted, that councils have adopted over the years, and those are based on engineering design requirements that have been updated over the years, and developers are required to build in accordance with those design standards. And so there's always going to be a potential incident that will exceed those design standards. But we as a city government have said, here's the threshold that we believe is going to handle 99% of the cases.
Councilor Karski.
Mike, I think our design, excuse me, standards are for what, a 6-inch rain in a certain amount of time? Does that sound correct?
It's based on a 10-year event, so much rain per hour.
Okay.
Yeah, over a duration.
Just curious, and this might be part of a separate conversation that the council looks at, but those design standards, are they up? Is that something the council approves? I mean, are we looking at, we've had so many incidences in the last few years where our design standards are at a level that we're hitting a lot more often than it seems like we should be. How can we look at that?
I think most of the flooding conditions that we've had to deal with have been in the older areas of the city. I think we've had fewer incidences in the newer developments that are in compliance.
But can the council look at changing those design standards?
Yeah, we have a process.
Bringing that up for maybe a committee.
We have the Infrastructure Review Advisory Board that we take those through, and then the City Council approves the engineering design standards.
And if I could, one question. Going from the existing to the proposed, how many housing units difference roughly would you say going from single family to what we're looking at?
I haven't really sat down and tried to calculate that.
No idea.
Maybe the applicant can guess that number, but I haven't put a number to it because it really could change.
Councilor Mbach.
But something you just said a moment ago is curious to me, that it's currently, and the neighbors expressed that expectation, it's currently zoned to be single-family housing. Mm-hmm. And your comment was the new plan with multifamily housing is not going to make that much difference in terms of drainage compared to single-family, multifamily. The drainage system is going to be similar. I don't think I've ever heard you say it that way before. Can you talk about that in a little more detail? What do you mean? How does that work?
Well, you'll have fewer buildings.
But more tarmac, more driveways or more parking lots and
Some
whatnot.
of it will be garages, some of it will be parking lots. So again, it really depends on the layout. You'll probably have fewer roadways that will cause a lot of surface runoff. But as we look at the stormwater drainage plan, then we base it on the zoning and the land uses. And, residential is still residential. And it's hard to give you a specific number until we actually see what the final development plan is going to look like.
Cool.
But residential doesn't vary as much as if it was going to be commercial or even office uses with the larger parking lots and those kind of things.
So if, for instance, if we decided we were going to put a Target there, that kind of parking lot is different than a parking lot for an apartment building.
Yes, that would have a significant increase.
I'd never thought of it that way. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Jameson.
Thank you, Mike. The RD2 twin homes, I get that. I think adding that row of twin homes next to the other twin homes seems to be a compromise. But the other RD2, what is likely to be built there?
The applicant is talking about between 4 and 8 unit townhomes.
4 and 8, and would you consider that a low density transition to the, as far as compatibility chart goes, you'd call that a low, I guess would be highly compatible?
Yes, it would be compatible with the twin homes to the north and then the RA1 to the south, which would be up to 24 unit apartment buildings. And then the RA3 that you've approved would allow the larger apartment buildings. So that's the transition that we've tried to work on.
Right. Well, the comment about the drainage there, that whole area is very wet.
Mm-hmm.
The whole area. And I would hope that under new development that it would only improve, I would hope.
Yes.
I would think that would be the goal for everybody, to have the existing neighbors and the new developer to improve the drainage in that area. I don't know how we can guarantee it, but I think that would happen with development.
I would say under the current condition, it just kind of spreads out all over the field. It's not a defined drainage pattern.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Okay, Mike, I think we do this about every time we get into a southeast area. What is the natural flow in that area right now? Is it going to the east? Is it going to the south?
It's going to the east.
It is
this
going
exhibit,
to just similar as what you showed there.
Yes. So the twin homes that are existing, their backyards drain to the south, and then it goes to the east to that stormwater detention pond, and then it goes east from there across Southeastern.
Okay, and then we have the other development going on the east side of Southeastern there. So basically we have storm water retention and everything heading in that direction.
Right.
What's the topography in that proposed areas? How much lower is it on the south side of, what is that, 69?
It's fairly flat. That's why there's another stormwater detention pond proposed on that southwest corner, closer down to 69th Street along the railroad right away. But right now it is fairly flat, and that's kind of why the water just spreads out like it does. So,
one more, if I may, Mayor. And then I know we've discussed this a couple of years ago. We discussed about having some type of committee made up of Minnehaha County, Lincoln County, and the city of Sioux Falls to discuss these type of issues in this area. Am I off track here?
As far as drainage?
Drainage, water.
Okay.
Ever since we had some flooding issues to the south. How are we doing anything in that aspect as far as working with the two counties to, plan on how we're going to develop these areas?
I would say that I'm not aware that we have a formal process going right now, because again, in this case, any development within the Sioux Falls city limits cannot increase the runoff as a result of the development. And the runoff that eventually flows out of the development through the stormwater detention is directed typically to the Big Sioux River. That's where it ends up. So, but I will talk to our public works folks and drainage engineers about that comment.
Thank you.
Councilor Kiley, did you have a comment?
Mike, I'm glad to hear that you say that you believe that development will actually improve the flow of the water from west to east. I was out there in my vehicle during the second big rain event and hail event, which I didn't care for very much, but I can certainly testify that it was very, very wet at the time. It looked much like a swamp. And I think the water was slowly, along with my truck, slowly heading to the east.
Mm-hmm.
How will it cross Tanner Avenue once Tanner Avenue is projected?
Culverts. There'll be culverts designed to accommodate the flow.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And the sump pump collection system, are the existing twin homes tied into that sump pump collection system now?
I don't believe they are. They have sump pumps, but they're not tied into the collection system that has not been installed yet. Okay. Some are? Okay.
Oh, I believe some were on the western side of the development. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Farther to the west.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Erickson.
Sorry, one last little question.
Sure.
I think we need like a little map or something. The RD2, I know you told Councilor Jameson what it could be, what his plan is to be for that development. What else could it be? I mean, his plan is to do this, but as we know, things change. So what else could it potentially be?
The RD2 would allow up to a maximum of 8-unit townhomes.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Up to 8-unit townhome buildings.
Thank you. I ask every time because I can't
That's
keep
all
it all
right.
straight.
Good question.
Would anybody be willing to make a motion?
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
I'll second Rolfing.
Councilor Urbanbach has made a motion to approve this item, second by Councilor Rolfing. There's been really good discussion, good questions. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. Item 33.
Item 33 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by revising planning and zoning application fees. Planning Commission recommends approval.
Tonight we have 2 ordinance requests that are being brought to you by city staff, looking at updating some of our fees that we've charged. The first ordinance is the zoning division. A number of these fees have not been increased since the 1990s, and there's a couple new ones that we're asking to be put in place. One of the big ones that we deal with are temporary signs, or portable signs. We're asking that fee to be increased by $5 to $25. Floodplain development variances, we have tried to be very restrictive on floodplain variances, but when they do come to us, there's a number of engineering requirements. We have been working with FEMA to try to limit as much as possible floodplain variances. So we're putting a big number on there to really discourage those, and if it can be justified with engineering requirements, and if it can meet FEMA requirements, then we would consider it. The manufactured home placement trip charge is similar to what we have in our building code. When we do an inspection for a mobile home placement and it doesn't meet the requirements, we got to come back for a second or a third trip. It's just another fee that we've like to add to discourage, to make sure that, to try to encourage the compliance the first time around. We have a fee like that now for our building code inspection. Board of Adjustment, we haven't raised that fee since the 1990s for variance requests. Fence permit is a pretty minor percentage change, going to $20. Zoning permits where there's not a building construction involved, like parking lots, where we still have to do some type of a plan review. That would go up to $25. A site plan review that we currently don't charge for, but we're getting more projects where, such as large parking lots that involve staff time to review, not only for zoning setbacks, but also for drainage requirements. We would like to start charging a $50 review fee for that. We have 2 ongoing requests, primarily from financial institutions. We get a lot of requests for letters showing that property is zoned in a certain way or that allows certain use or it's in compliance with the existing use. And some of those have existing legal descriptions, some of those don't, and so we would like to raise that just to make it more in line with the staff time that's involved. So some of these we're raising fees that have not been done since the 90s, and some of these are new fees that we're trying to incorporate to better handle the staff time and review that we go through. And this is also hoping to be reflected in our 2015 budget request that we'll be talking to you about next Tuesday. So I'll stop there.
A second reading, folks. Anybody interested in talking about this? Councilor Jameson.
Mike, how much money are you kind of expecting this will generate?
This one, it was hard for us to put a number on it, just because some of these are new that we haven't done before. But like in the case of signs, we do hundreds of those sign permits a year. The manufactured home placements, we do maybe a couple of dozen of those a year. Fence permits, we have so far this year done 665 fence permits. So it's kind of hard to put a number on the whole list of proposed changes.
But if I could, in all fairness, it isn't significant. It's a new increase for sure, but it isn't. I haven't heard complaints about the fees that we're charging for this. But
out of line with what we think is reasonable charges.
Thank you.
Councilor Woody, you want to make a motion?
So move, Anderson.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Oh, Councilor Staggers.
Yes, I was just going to mention here, a lot of those fees that you have, Mike, are actually, fees or permits to use your own property. And there seems to be something, at least in my mind, kind of wrong about that. Because you have your own property, and then there's a fee imposed, like a fence fee. I mean, we're taking a minor one, but, put up a fence on your own property. And to do that, you're forced to get this permit, and then you're forced to pay for that. And then over the years, well, we haven't had a rate increase in a number of years, let's raise it again, then raise it again. It just doesn't seem right that we should be paying for permits to use our own property, like putting up a fence or some of those other issues too.
Yeah, the zoning codes, the building codes are all life safety issues. I mean, we're trying to make sure that we can protect property, whether it's stormwater or putting the fence on the right side of the property line, the right height for visibility. There's a lot of reasons why we have those codes that we've enacted over the years, and the staff is responsible for enforcing those codes and standards, and we believe it's reasonable to charge fees for those permits and for those reviews.
Yeah, that's, I know the staff feels they're responsible for all of this stuff, but when it comes to drainage, like we just talked about in a previous issue, oftentimes the city doesn't take responsibility anyway. But we pay the fees to get the permit and so forth to use our own property.
Well, all of the development has to go through a stormwater drainage process and permitting.
Yeah.
Public Works.
Sure it does.
So,
yeah.
And there's fees for that too. So.
Yeah, right. Lots of fees.
Yep. Council, any comments? Any more comments? A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
No.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-1. Item 34.
Item 34 is a second reading and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 160, zoning, subchapter fees. Planning Commission recommends approval.
These are the fee requests from the Planning Division. Again, many of these have not been updated for some time. We've got a table again that summarizes the current fees, the requested increases, and then in this case we do have some projected revenues because we have a better history of the number of issues that we typically deal with. So these have been reviewed by staff, and I think we have a second slide that shows like some of the comparisons. We didn't go out to a number of cities, but some of those that we typically look at in our region were usually below or right in line with some of their fees that they charge. The two ones that are the most common are the rezoning and the conditional uses.
Thanks, Mike. Would anybody in the audience want to speak to this item? Thank you. Council, any comments, motions? Councilor Anderson Jr.
Question on the annexation fee, Mike. What does that cover?
Yes, that covers when a petitioner requests annexation, the staff has to go through and review not only with the petitioner but with other city staff, with the county, the township, sometimes the state, to make sure we know what the impacts are going to be on the property as well as the city if that's annexed. So we do an analysis of all the different utility services, roadways, and then there's a publication fee that we have to go through when those properties are annexed. So that's kind of what we're trying to cover, is primarily the time involved in reviewing those.
Is this per property, or
it's
is
per,
this a whole division? Or?
It could be, it's per annexation petition.
So,
it's the whole.
So like something that we're dealing with now, that fee would not?
No, that would not apply.
Okay.
These are when property owners petition the city voluntarily.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
These are not the ones that the city is working on. Thank you for that clarification.
Council, would anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Kiley.
Second, Karski.
Thank you, Councilor Karski. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
No.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Herpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That's passed 7-1. Item 35.
Item 35 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at the southwest corner of East 57th Street and South Sycamore Avenue from the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar and RA2 Apartment Residential, moderate density districts to the C3 Commercial Community RA3 Apartment Residential, high density, and RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban Districts, petition number 2014-67, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
The applicant for this item is Joel Dykstra, representing RMB Associates. This property is located on the southwest corner of East 57th Street and South Sycamore Avenue. It's approximately 36.5 acres in size. The applicant is asking the council to update the current zoning that was put in place fairly recently, based on, again, this southeast growing area. The market for residential and non-residential is changing from what it was even a few years ago. So the side-by-side comparison, and I'll take us through this zoning terminology if we can show. Yep, we've got that up there. The C2 commercial would allow up to 25,000 square foot buildings maximum. The C3 would allow up to 75,000 square foot commercial buildings maximum. The RA3 provides for 3-story apartment buildings that can be greater than 48 units per building. And the RD2 provides for townhomes. So again, the transition of what it is today versus what it's proposed to be is on that north side, we're expanding the size of the commercial buildings. And in the center, the RA2 is being changed to a higher density multifamily, but still keeping the townhome transition on the very south end. And then in that northeast corner is still undeveloped agricultural. So it's not a significant change from the current zoning, but it does, again, provide the developer with an opportunity to market this property for more of an updated land use plan that they feel is in keeping with what's expected out in that southeast area. Stop there.
Thanks, Mike. Would anybody want to speak to this item in the audience? Thank you. Council? Yes, Councilor Rolfing.
How about drainage again on this? Do we have a retention pond or?
Yeah, we don't show it on here, but it is being provided off this site along the west and to the south. And we don't have the zoning designations for this yet, but you can see on the east side of Sycamore, there's a large stormwater detention area. And the flow again of this is primarily that east side because that's where it ends up going back towards the Big Sioux River.
Councilor Jameson.
Mike, I think this is a great plan. I move for approval.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Jameson's made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Karski. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson? Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 36.
Item 36 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at the southeast corner of West 85th Street and South Tallgrass Avenue from the AG Agricultural District to the C2 Commercial, Neighborhood and Streetcar C3 Commercial, Community O Office, RA3 Apartment Residential, High Density, and RD Townhome Residential, Suburban Districts, petition number 2014-66, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
This item is also Joel Dykstra, applicant, RMB Associates. This is located in the southeast corner of West 85th and South Tallgrass Avenue. The site is 64 acres. This was recently annexed into the city, approved by City Council, and now we're rezoning it for the first time from agricultural to proposed residential and non-residential uses. This is a very similar development plan to the one that we just looked at. In the corners would be the C3 and C2 commercial. In the middle is going to be office. We've working with the applicant to use our shape places ordinance and look at more the lifestyle center with the higher density uses that would serve this growing neighborhood. And then the RA3 again would be the higher density multifamily with the twin homes along that east side adjacent to the existing low density residential. This is another case where the city limits, this is the edge of the city limits, and so the stormwater drainage in this case will also be extending off-site to existing detention ponds. And as we get farther into this subdivision plan, we'll have those stormwater patterns better defined. But the zoning, the land use is the first step, and then from here our drainage engineers, the consultants that are working for the applicant will come back and give us a more detailed stormwater management plan as part of the subdivision plan that will come back for future city council approval. So there'll be another step in this process that you'll see with the roads and lots and stormwater utility layout.
Thanks, Mike. Would anybody want to speak to this item? Council?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Karski. Councilor Karski.
Mike, just explain to me, C3, when I look at this versus the last ordinance that we just passed, is there a footprint size that C3 has to be on as far as square footage for lot size, or can C3 be on any size lot?
We don't have a minimum lot size, but again, whatever building size they put in, they have to have the required parking and setbacks and buffer yards. So in this case, if it's going to be a 75,000 square foot building or say a 50,000 square foot building, they would have to have enough lot area to meet the other requirements for setbacks and parking and drainage.
Thank you.
Councilor Rolfing.
Give me an idea again, because of my poor memory, how a typical 75,000 foot building.
Yes.
Is that a Target, or is that a?
No, it's much smaller than that.
Like a,
It's
Ace
smaller than a
Hardware?
Hy-Vee, smaller than a Target. It would be a mid-size retail store. I don't know that I can give you a specific
Lewis
store
Drug.
name. Yeah, maybe in that,
That kind of thing, good.
yeah, in that 50 to 75,000 square foot range would be typically what that might cover.
Super, thank you.
Right, Councilor.
Oh, really?
A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski? Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. 37, please.
Item 37 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property at the northwest corner of South Purdue Avenue and West Lobelia Street from the RA Single Family Residential Suburban District to the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District, petition number 2014-64, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
The applicant for this item is Brady Hyde with Empire Homes. This is just under 3 acres in size. The property has been subdivided into lots, and the applicant is proposing to rezone this for twin homes. There'll be 7 twin homes on this site. Under the previous zoning ordinance, they would have to come back through for a conditional use. So again, that's one of the Shape Places benefits, is that we're zoning it, so now we know how that's going to be developed, rather than having to go through the conditional use process each time.
Thanks, Mike. Would anybody want to speak to this item? Council?
Move for approval, Anderson.
I'll second, Rolfing.
Thank you, Councilors. Councilor Anderson Jr. has made that motion, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 38.
Item 38 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property east and west of North Marlow Avenue and north of East Fairway Drive from the AG Agricultural District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District, petition number 2014-63, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
The applicant for this item is Scott Gilbert and Pat Beckman. This is located northeast of Cactus Drive and west of Powderhouse Road. It's southeast of Great Bear Recreation Park area. The property is just over 26 acres in size, and the purpose of the rezoning is to construct single-family lots or single-family homes on 17 lots. So the proposal is to construct 17 lots on the 26 acres of land. These will be large lots because of the topography. This is the way that the property lays out in terms of development feasibility. This was annexed by City Council action in May of this year, and so now we're going through the next step, which is the rezoning. Through the Planning Commission hearing, the 2 things that we've heard recently, one was concerns from the Cactus Heights neighborhood that there was going to be a connection from this subdivision over to Cactus Drive for secondary or emergency access. That will not be the case. The access to this Canterbury Heights development will be from Marlow Avenue, and then the fire marshal has approved a secondary emergency access that would go east over to Powderhouse Road. So that takes away the concern that this will connect to the Cactus Drive neighborhood. That will not be the case. And then just today, we heard from residents to the south of this rezoning within the existing development that were concerned about what impact these 17 single-family lots were going to have on the traffic flow. If we can put the subdivision plan up there. This is the subdivision plan that was approved to the south of the rezoning. This was approved in about 2003, I believe. And at that time, it showed primarily single family, some townhomes. But if you look at the very top or the north side of the map, it was put in place so that the streets would extend north to the next property owner to the north. So the intent has always been that this development would connect to the future development, which is what we're considering for rezoning tonight. The second thing that I would say is that we have a standard or a policy that we use that when you get above 30 lots, you need to have a secondary access point. And that's a fire marshal public safety issue that we've used over the years. So once you get over 30 units, you have to have a secondary access. In this case, we're talking about 17 single-family homes that would be added. So the two things that I would say is that the subdivision was designed over 10 years ago with the idea that there would be additional development connecting to it. And because it's under 30 lots, it does meet the requirements that we have. But there might be some people here tonight to raise that concern. We just heard about that this afternoon, so I have not personally had a chance to visit with those residents about this. So that's it.
Yeah. Folks, it is second reading. Did anybody want to engage the council? Welcome.
My name's Gary Hyatt. I'm with the North Cactus Heights Association. I'm the president of that association, not to be mistaken with the South one, which you have a pre-annexation agreement with until 2025. We're still winging it. I was asked, and actually our group voted on July 23rd for me to come here and ask you to delay because it was going to come down our road. So thankfully to, I believe, the fire department, they decided that it wouldn't make sense to come down that road. And if you've ever been out there, you would agree. Also, however, the city plan still shows that road of North Cactus Drive to be a collector street. And our hope is that that will be rewritten, and if people come out again and look at that, and I heard the term collector street used a couple times tonight during the meeting, so it would be important to review that in the future city plan. The other reason I'm here speaking to you, though, is also in preparation before these plans were changed. I wanted to thank the council and particularly the city employees that were extremely helpful to myself and other members of our small homeowners association. We're only 14 homes, and a number of them had written to council members and had been in communication with city people, and the response we got back and the help we received was tremendous, and you're to be complimented for that. Thank you very much. And that's probably about it. Might see you in September for a different matter.
Gary, thank you. Appreciate it, and thanks for the kind words. Thank you. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome. Is there anybody else too? Just come on up if there is. Thank you.
Hi, I am Todd Miller, and I am with Canterbury Heights, which is the neighborhood up there. And we just learned, the reason that they just got an inquiry today is we just learned last night when one of the neighbors happened to walk their dog to the very back of the neighborhood and noticed the zoning notice sign. And then we learned about this, and then we inquired and asked some more questions today of the city, and that's why that came about. Our neighborhood, there are no houses back there. The houses are in the first part of the neighborhood, and then when you go back to the dead end where they're proposing this, then there was signage. As I understand in talking to the city, apparently that meets the code of being of notification within 300 or 500 feet of where your proposed changes are. But given the fact that none of us who are affected by traffic, none of us were notified, none of us went by there, we had no time to do any research about this. So there are some of us here tonight. We're not necessarily opposed to the development, except that the traffic flow has not, I don't think, been properly addressed. I don't think that we were properly notified. It might have met the code, but I think that zoning notice ought to include not just who is within walking distance of that, but who might be affected by the traffic flow as well, regardless of the 300 or 500 foot limit, because we just learned about it by accident. That would just be my recommendation for the future. The comment was made earlier about the traffic flow that we're concerned about is the previous development, and I know that Christine, I think, made comment about it before. Developers' plans seem to change. Our development has one entrance in it, and it was supposed to have another main entrance, and right now it's just being used, is coming off of Dubuque Avenue, is all the traffic is going into there. And why this new proposed zoning affects us is that the verbiage that when I pulled up on the website says the accessibility, it says the proposed development will have access to south on North Marlowe Avenue to North Dubuque to East Madison Street. Well, I don't know if it was intentional or by accident, but you don't get from North Marlowe to Dubuque without going through Paddington and North Tahoe and Maynard and Tahoe. And that takes you by 30 houses with a whole bunch of kids, and that road was never designed to have traffic feeding through there other than around the Half Moon. North Marlowe, which goes up to the new proposed development, has just stopped, and the developer has never developed it down to East Tahoe Street. Nor has Highline Avenue been developed, which is supposed to be the main entrance to the neighborhood off of Madison Street. So we have no other north-south traffic available or movement of traffic other than going around Paddington Trail. So the previous gentleman made comment about, well, the ordinance says 30 houses and we only have 17. The problem is there's already 35 or 36 houses that are feeding out to Dubuque, and now this would be 17 additional. And I, along with our neighbors, are generally pro-development and think this would possibly be a good addition to the neighborhood. However, there's a problem with the follow-through of the previous development, of which I believe Mr. Beckman was involved, but when does the city make the accountability or the follow-through when there's required to have two entrances? And the economy slowed down, we understand that, but now we're 10 years into this development, approximately, and we still have no other emergency exit. We are supposed to be able to get off onto from North Tahoe and get over to Madison Street as another exit. Also, I know that some of the neighbors said that Sioux Falls schools won't come and pick up their kids on Paddington Trail because Marlowe has not been completed. And so they're forced to have their kids come way out to Dubuque in order to get picked up. So while we agree with the previous discussion that the traffic shouldn't go up Dubuque and up to a private drive, we believe that there needs to be some completion of the previously intended traffic flow. Rather than going around Paddington, it needs to that some traffic needs to either go on Marlowe or somehow get to Highline Avenue in order to have that traffic flow properly and safely. The fire code discussion, again, we just learned about this today, so I apologize if any of the information is not 100% correct. This Rosemary Street that they're talking about being a fire code exit. That's interesting because there's barbed wire fence around there right now, and the road is very eroded. It's a farmer's driveway basically, and discussion about will they really ever use that as a fire escape? The answer was no, but supposedly it's there. I guess one alternative as far as a positive for Rosemary Street, if that was actually developed as a road and the construction equipment and everything was allowed to go through there, and that was actually another alternative exit of any decent quality, that might be an option. But we still believe that there needs to be some follow-through of the initial plan of Canterbury Heights to have Marlowe go down to at least the Tahoe and perhaps even to jag out to go to the east and to have Highline Avenue completed, which is supposed to be the entry to the neighborhood. That phase 4 on the very bottom of that demonstration, it says phase 4, is our ranch condos. There are going to be 90 units in there. Right now there's about 30 units in there. That traffic is supposed to all flow to East Tahoe as well. It does right now, but they're also supposed to have a second exit onto there, which Tahoe Street's not completed for them to use that second exit, which also those people also could flow either to Highline Avenue or to Dubuque. So our question is, at what point do we actually get another emergency exit that is a viable exit, and at what point, how many more houses really have to be developed before we're going to have traffic flowing properly? So we think with this late notice, that approval of the development, from what we know about the rezoning, we don't know of anything that we're not anti-development. We think that probably would be good, but we don't know anything about any reason to disapprove that, but we think the approval of it ought to be with conditions that the traffic, that there's an alternative route for all of this construction traffic and the actual emergency exit, both out to either to Madison or at least down to East Tahoe, so we can get out, safely out of there.
Todd, thank you very much. Council, I let Todd go on quite a bit longer than normal, but I hope you understand I think he was representing a group of homeowners. Folks, anybody else want to speak on behalf of this topic? Welcome.
My name is Pat Beckman from Sioux Falls. Mr. Miller was correct. I was originally involved in the development of the land to the south. That was some property that we were managing for some individuals, and since that time, when the economy went to pieces, they decided that we weren't working very hard selling lots, and so they got somebody else involved. We do have no ownership in that property, so there is little we can do about installing any streets. The 17 lots to the back, there will be, I think it's 2 lots that are less than an acre in size, and the rest of them are all much bigger than that. Much to my chagrin, I will have to say that those lots will not develop in a 2-year period. It's just, they're a little expensive for people to build that fast back there. We will not create any more construction traffic than what's already going in there for the lots to the south of us. And eventually, the landowners it'll be to the, right over there where it says access route, that area is owned by a different group, and it was to be a joint venture with them to put in Highline. I have no idea when they will do that. But I think that the 17 lots on 26 acres will not create much traffic into the rest of that area as it slowly gets developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council before we turn it over to them? Councilor Nakarski?
Mike, when are the roads going to be completed out there? I think they have a valid point. What can we tell them?
Right. We don't have a time frame, and again, we're hearing from these people for the first time. There's a subdivision planning process that we have to go through, and so what I would propose is after tonight, we'll go back and meet with the current landowners, and we'll come up with a better timeline of when those development roads are going to be put in. I'm not sure if they even know, but the fire marshal has approved this access road that would meet the standards for secondary access. And that would have to be done before this new development could go into place.
And from what I understand, there's multiple ownership interests here,
Right.
and Canterbury Heights has no ownership interest in the property to the south.
Right.
Is that correct?
So we're dealing with 2 or 3 different property owners that we would go back and look at how we can coordinate this and make sure that it's done the right way.
Thank you.
And we'll do that.
Councilor, thank you. Councilor Urbanbach.
My questions kind of go along that same line. Just to clarify, is Cactus Drive considered a collector street now?
No,
Private drive.
it's a private road. It connects to Dubuque,
Right.
which is a collector.
Okay. And so eventually, once all of Gary's little neighborhood is added in our dreamlands, then it will be a collector street.
Well, one of the discussions that we're going to be having, if I'll give you a long answer to your question.
Okay.
The council has been asked to defer another zoning item,
Right.
which is in the northeast corner of the Cactus Heights development, primarily to talk about the road system. So as we come back in September to discuss that, we'll have some better recommendations on how to deal with the roadway system over there,
Okay.
because they're still private roads.
Right. Okay. Then one other, if I might, Mr. Mayor. Marlowe, in terms of a street then, is it doesn't go down, I mean, where the yellow line is now, Marlowe does not go out to that street? Is that what I'm hearing?
Stops at Paddington.
It stops at Paddington.
And then just goes around.
I'll answer that. It does not,
Would you ask?
it's
Would
not completely constructed all the way to the north property line yet.
Sir, if I can,
Thank you. I hear
I
what they're
appreciate
saying.
it.
The
Thank
streets
you.
are not built the way that, this map is really not accurate at all. And so what they're saying is the streets are not going where we think they should.
So is the
I guess
zoning, I'm sorry.
I would ask my colleagues, and I'll make the motion, that we defer this at least 2 weeks, if not a month or more, until we have this conversation figured out. I wouldn't be driving on those streets, and I wouldn't want more neighbors.
You want to give a date?
I would ask the clerk to offer a date that's 2 weeks out from now.
How long are we waiting for the Cactus Heights?
Well, that's what I wondered. Do we move it to September?
I think we should move it together if we're going to do anything. We're going to be talking about the roadways right in here, and that's why they're deferring the North Cactus Heights. We should combine them together.
I'm agreeable to that. Again, I'm not, also, as the neighbors are saying, I'm not anti-development here. I'm just very concerned about the streets that we're giving these people. So,
Tuesday, August 19th?
August 19th, or do we want to wait until September?
I'd like to
You know
see
what,
September.
September 2nd is the first Tuesday of September.
Does
Mike,
anyone know what date
can you give a recommendation? You've heard some of the ancillary comments.
The other one that we'll be considering is going to be deferred to September 16th.
My motion would be to defer this item to September 16th, 2014.
Second.
There's been a motion to defer this item to September 16th. It's been seconded by Councilor Karski. Discussion, Council?
I think Mr. Beckman has something, would like to say something to that. I think I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Mr. Beckman, Pat, would you come forward, please?
This is kind of assuming that we are going to bring that Cactus Heights project in for that meeting on the 16th. And I don't think we're going to have enough time to take care of the problems that are there as to how we're going to handle some problems. We've looked at it for a month now and asked for one defer it for 1 month. I don't think we're going to be ready by that time. But I would like to know one way or the other whether we're going to be able to do any work yet this year on Canterbury Heights. And if it need be, if it makes you feel better, I'll pull the Cactus Heights project for the rest of this year. But I don't want to pull Canterbury Heights. They're two different projects, two different sets of problems.
There's been a motion to defer this item to September 16th and has been seconded. Any further discussion? Councilor Jameson.
A question for Mike, if I could. Mike, what kind of controls do we have in place that we could let this guy get going, but control the traffic or require his roadway access? Is there any? Do we have any?
What we would do is go back to the owner, developer to the south, and well as meet with engineering to come up with a schedule, a recommendation, and even work with Mr. Beckman on how the street improvements would be done in conjunction with the future housing construction.
So based on a favorable solution there, then only then could he go forward.
Right. And so maybe, well, I don't know that we need till September 16th to make that, but that's your decision, so.
Councilor Rittenbach.
I guess that's what I was going to say, is that if we do consider these two separate things, but I concur with Councilor Anderson that if we're going to hear all of it at one time, maybe this makes the most sense. But
Councilor Rolfing? No. Councilor, yes, and thank you for coaching me. Councilor Karski?
Yeah, I look at this and I agree that when you first think about it, it seems like we haven't, maybe the plan isn't complete. And when we're talking about the motion to delay this, we're talking about 17 homes here, but the problem's bigger than these 17 homes. The problem is the traffic out in this neighborhood. It needs to be completed, and I don't think delaying this is going to help that. And I don't see any reason why we have to hold up this development. And I empathize, I really do, with the people that live out there that, hey, we need to complete the plan. We need access. But I don't know that holding this up is going to help that. This needs some attention. And I'm going to vote against delaying this.
Councilor Anderson Jr.
I guess I'm going to disagree. I've been in this area a lot, and basically it is still very much undeveloped. The roadways out there are not capable of handling the construction traffic and things like that. I think we still need to have some time to allow the neighbors in the south to work out details with this development. I still have major concerns about roadways in that area, and this is a planning issue, Mike. This is something that if we're going to be developing out here, we need to have a plan for that whole area, not just the development, but that whole area of how we're going to move people in and out of there. You know, and my concern also is concerned with the north section. How are we going to get, is there going to be any roadways up there? Is there any potential roadways up there? That's what I want to hear. Okay. And I haven't heard any of that in both the readings that we've gone through on this.
And we do have that, and we can provide that to you. So,
Councilor Erickson.
I'm going to offer a substitute motion, just so we're not delaying this until the 16th. I empathize with the homeowner, so my substitute motion is going to delay this until Tuesday, August 19th, to get the recommendation for those roads. We can get a plan in place. We're not delaying it too terribly long, so you can get your development moving along, but we can continue the conversation since this was kind of almost felt like it was sprung upon them. So I'd ask for you to support that. So my motion is a substitute motion to delay the next second reading to Tuesday, August 19th.
I would second the substitute motion.
David, can Councilor Rittenbach do that? Thank you.
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Again, thanks for coaching me. Very good. We've got a substitute motion by Councilor Erickson, and it was seconded by the original person, Councilor Rittenbach. So that's good. And no further discussion. A roll call vote, please, on the substitute motion. Council, thank you.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski? Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That has passed 8-0. So now I have a substitute motion that has been approved. Any further discussion? That's it? Oh, fantastic. The item has been deferred. Thank you so much. And neighbors, thank you. Pat, thank you. Item 39.
Item 39 is a first reading to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, August 12, 2014 at 7 o'clock p.m. for an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing for interest rates for special assessments on street and utility improvement costs and engineering and testing costs for a portion of the Sanford Sports Complex.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Don Kearney with Parks and Rec. I wanted to start out a little background on this, and this is normally something a Public Works Department handles on street assessments, but giving our involvement in the Sanford Sports Complex and the junior football complex that we helped to develop in cooperation with South Dakota Junior Football and Sanford, felt it was good to have some background, especially for some of our newer council members. For a long time, South Dakota Junior Football had a pent-up demand for additional fields to be able to accommodate the number of teams that they were seeing wanting to register for their program. At Riverdale, they had 3 fields plus an additional almost regulation-sized field that they were using. And the other thing that I would share with you is that we tried to analyze not only their current needs for field space, but also their future needs for field space. And one of the challenges we faced in trying to deal with that issue is we needed a large tract of land to be able to develop the number of fields that we felt like we needed. And so Sanford was able to provide a very generous gift of 40-plus acres to be able to develop those fields. Estimated value of over $3 million for that land. And it probably was one of the largest gifts the city's ever received, or at least within Parks and Rec anyway. And so it was a big gift, and we're grateful for that. As part of that discussion, there was also a need to serve the football complex in advance of their needs for their other development in that area. We were the first in, so to speak, and so all the roads leading into there had to get back to our parking lots and our complex. And so they agreed to build the roads to be able to meet our timeline for wanting to get those fields in operation. And so based on the street configurations that are out there now, Sanford and Bob Hall have the property that's adjacent to those roads, so they're the abutting properties that would be assessed. We fortunately didn't have any abutting property that abutted those streets that needed to be constructed. Therefore, we were not being assessed. However, if you've ever been at a junior football Saturday, we do generate a lot of traffic and a lot of parking. And so they were very gracious in allowing us to help get those roads in when we needed them. And then given the fact that they advanced the street improvements to meet our timeline, in addition to the gift of the land to us, at the time they asked us that we consider providing the assessments interest-free in consideration for their assistance for the Sanford Sports Complex and the junior football fields associated with that. And so obviously that's subject to your approval as City Council, and we shared with them that when we originally entered into that agreement. And so that is now before you. Diane Best is Assistant City Attorney with and helps with Public Works, and she's here to take on the rest of that item.
Diane, welcome.
Thank you. I am Diane Best. I'm appearing here today on behalf of Public Works. I was asked to review this matter. As Mr. Carney indicated, a contribution of 44 acres of land was made by Sanford Health for the city for the outdoor sports fields. The land was originally part of a larger parcel of land that's owned by an individual named Bob Hall. And you're familiar with Bob Hall. He's been a benefactor to the community in other ways as well. Both Sanford Health and Bob Hall own other property in the area. Back in 2012, this council passed a resolution of necessity, or adopted a resolution of necessity, I should say, for city street improvements adjoining the Hall and Sanford property. And as a result, as part of the development in that area, the city constructed streets and utilities on West Benson Road and North Bob Hall Drive to serve not only the city-owned football complex, which is the 45 acres that Mr. Carney was just talking about, but also the remaining properties owned by Sanford Health and Bob Hall. The construction was completed in late 2012. In 2013, the final costs of construction were calculated. Sanford and Bob Hall will be assessed for the street and utility construction. So here we're looking at a dedication by these individuals of roads, and then also by Sanford Health of the football complex property. They will be assessed also for the road and utility improvements. The Sanford assessment will be in the amount of $693,569.27. The Bob Hall assessment will be in excess of $275,000. Sanford Health and Bob Hall are responsible for paying those assessments. The city previously agreed back 5 years ago when the 45 acres of land was donated and this property was rural property, that when the street and utility improvements went in, that I should say the city administration agreed to seek a waiver of interest on the street and utility improvement assessments for West Benson Road and North Bob Hall Drive. That is, the administration agreed to seek a waiver of the interest on the assessments subject to city council approval. And so I want to clear that it's a deference to the city council on the matter, but the administration did make that agreement of a waiver of the interest. And that was part actually of the donation agreement with Sanford for the 45 acres, and then a similar commitment was made, albeit more informally, also to Mr. Hall, that the administration would move forward with a 0% interest on the assessments. Public Works is the entity that prepares the assessment roll and brings the assessments forward. And in preparing the roll, we would need to have a rate determined by this council before the assessment roll is made. The reason that this is an ordinance is because your interest rates for special assessments are set by ordinance. So you have, as you recall, you recently changed the city ordinance for special assessments, and this one would provide for a 0% interest rate for this specific issue. And then if the council goes ahead and approves the 0% interest rate for these assessments, the next step would be that the assessment roll would be brought before this council, and those assessments would be put on the tax rolls for the properties involved. And they would be we would prepare them for a 5-year assessment collection. So today we're not asking for the assessment, we're asking for what the interest rate will be on these assessments, and we are honoring the previous administration's commitment to seek 0% interest for both the Bob Hall and the Sanford assessments. So if this was taken out, the entire 5 years for the whole assessments, the interest rate would be, for the Bob Hall portion of it, would be $26,000, and for the Sanford it would be approximately $68,000. So that's the interest you would be waiving if the property owners were to take it the full 5 years and pay the interest during the 5-year period.
Diane, thank you.
Any questions?
Very much. Council, any questions? Councilor Staggers.
Yes. Diane, when was this agreement made? Once again, was it in 2012 or?
The actual agreement to accept the donation of land from Sanford Health was made in 2009.
Okay.
So that's why I brought up the previous administration, and
Sure.
that's when the commitment was made to the 0% interest, and the commitment was made to seek a 0% interest from the council. So it was a deference to the council at that time. And then in 2012, the resolution of necessity was adopted for construction of the street and utility improvements in that area.
Well, myself, I don't mind voting to give 0% interest. But my concern is we have other groups too that are coming before us and wanting to get different, well, they're being assessed too. I don't see how we could honestly just say, okay, we're going to charge you interest and we're not going to charge you interest. So I'm going to vote for this, but in the future, every one of these other groups that come, and they're homeowners, and I don't see how we can charge them interest.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Sorry, I had to step out for a moment. You said that these assessments were for Benson Road and what other road?
Actually, it's Benson Road and Bob Holla Drive.
Okay.
So it would be right as they intersect at the
okay. Thank you.
Area there.
Move to approve, Karski.
Second, Erpenbach.
What we're doing, thank you, Councilor Karski, and thank you, Councilor Mbach, is we're setting a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, August 12th. Councilor Rolfing?
I have one thing to
Please.
Express. I think the difference, Councilor Staggers, if I could address that, is that this land, the property itself was given as a donation.
Sure. Rather
than a personal property or business entity where they would still pay that. And if they wanted to pay it off, which I assume, which I'm kind of thinking these people are probably going to do anyways, write a check for it, and then be done with it, where other people are not maybe able to do that. So I think the gift itself is something we need to consider in doing this. As well, we might if there's another situation that comes along this way.
Well, you can say that it's a gift, and it is a gift, but it's also they're paying some money here, and then they don't pay over here. These other people we talk about, they don't have that option at all.
Very good, Council. There has been a motion to set this date of hearing, and it has been seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. Item 40.
Item 40 is a first reading, set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, August 12th, 2014 at 7:00 p.m. for an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by revising Chapter 95, Parks and Recreation.
Mayor, if I could.
Please, Councilor Jameson.
Thank you. This amendment really is, I would call it a significant change in the practice of the City Council, but just to summarize, the effect of it is that nothing in the chapter shall prohibit the City Council from taking official action governing the use of city public parks. So in essence, I suppose, if you haven't read it or heard some of the discussion, it allows the council to take immediate action without having to have the Parks Board review and give us recommendations. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about this, and I just want to clear the room, really. It is not about parks. This issue is about public safety. What's happening at that particular location, none of us would send our families there to use that facility. What we need is immediate action. This change allows us to do that going forward and in the future. So I would respectfully ask for your support to set a second hearing date for Tuesday, August 12th.
Councilor Jameson, would you want to make that motion?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there a second? There's a motion to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, August 12th, and it has been seconded. Councilor Erpenbach.
If I could, yeah. I just, I agreed with Councilor Jameson to bring this forward as part of the conversation that surrounds what's going on at Van Epps Park. But if that's the only reason that we're going to do this, then My concern is honestly that now that this is happening at Van Epps Park and not necessarily on private property, that suddenly it's news and suddenly we care about it. Whereas for months and years previously, it's been happening and going on in neighborhoods and on business properties all over, you know, the central part of our city. And so I'm really not particularly in favor of the way this is worded, and I don't believe it solves the problem that we're talking about. I think if we're dealing with Van Epps Park, that's a whole different conversation, and that this isn't an appropriate response to Van Epps Park, but we can talk about it at the hearing.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Well,
Councilor Rolfing.
Thank you. I agree with, I concur with Councilor Erpenbach. I also think that I want to make sure that we know that this, this type of amendment says nothing to the Parks Board and the job that they've done in the past or in the future. I'm leaning toward voting for it only because I think we need to have that stated that we can go ahead and do something on an emergency basis. But Councilor Erpenbach is exactly right. The problem is much deeper than that, and we need to get at that also.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
I also have my concerns with this as far as moving forward as maybe conflicting with some state law. And I mean, I know that we've had some discussion on that. I also agree that there's a larger issue here. And the consequences of making some of the moves that we've been discussing are something that, you know, we don't know what those consequences can be. Our mayor has done, I feel, a good job. He's, you know, communicated with leadership. He's done some things down at that park that have made things a little bit better for the surrounding area. You know, I'll utilize the porta potties. He's taken a little bit of heat for that. But by those porta potties being put in there, the consequences is we see less vandalism and usage in our library, which has very much changed the atmosphere in our downtown library. The mayor's also gone down there, and even with our police department, and had discussions with the people who are occupying the area. You know, they do have the right to occupy public space. So I mean, it's something that I think we need to really consider what we're doing here, consider the consequences, what's going to happen. Let's say we make it a dry park. Are we going to push this group of people out of there, and where are they going to go next? Are they going to go back into the Central Territory? Are they going to go back to the library? These are things that the administration is working on, and I think during this time before we have a next reading, that those discussions need to happen between us here.
Councilor Kiley.
I think that I could support the proposed amendment provided that we would use it very sparingly based on the conditions at the time. And since we cannot foresee conditions before they actually occur and establish criteria that would dictate how we would proceed, I would propose that any proposed change would require a supermajority of the council to proceed beyond that point.
Councilor Stegers.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak about this tonight because to me it seems so self-evident. We have an appointed board, we have an elected board. The elected board should always have priority over the appointed board. So I think all of us should enthusiastically support this.
Very good, thank you. Councilor Jameson.
Thank you. If I could just wrap up real quick. You know, this discussion has started a lot of other discussions, and I will agree that by changing the ordinance and including this language is not going to fix the problem. But in the future, if there is a problem, we will have the ability to take immediate action, and that's what this is all about. Whether we ban alcohol use in the future or we don't. But from tonight until the park board has a chance to review it, We have a chance to give a second reading and create this ordinance and create law, and then by the time we have another first reading and a second reading to initiate an alcohol ban in the park, we will have had a chance to discuss this as a community about a long-term solution. And I agree, the mayor's on it. Let's keep him doing that. Thank you. But as well, the rest of the community is going to have to come together because these people have lived here all their lives, as I understand it, a lot of them, and they're not leaving. We don't need to push them over to another part of town, but we cannot, I don't believe, allow the activity that's occurring there today to continue, knowing the outcomes that are occurring there. We don't think it's safe. We know it's not safe. We have a chance to fix it later. But I agree. All I wanted to say was this does start the conversation about a long-term fix, and I'm glad we're doing that.
A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That has passed 8-0. Thank you. Item 41.
Item 41 is a resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to certain citizen boards, those being, and my apologies in advance if I mispronounce names, Orpheum Theater Board of Directors Tyler Chrisman, Joseph Nikotowicz.
Nishadowicz.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Board Patty Abdallah, Mark Steinborn. Plumbing Board of Appeals and Examiners Robert Hillman. Veterans Park Advisory Board Brian Vognild.
Thank you. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Councilor Jamison.
Mayor, City Council, this is a great example to recognize the efforts of the Parks Board. We have two individuals being appointed here. There is a Parks Board member who is not being reappointed, Mark Millage, who would have been a fine council member if he would have been selected. And I know he's completely committed to the Parks Board. He's been enthusiastically involved in all their discussions. We need to thank those people who serve in those boards, just like this one. And I don't know a better way to do it than here, but I hope that Mark Steinborn serves in the same energy and capacity that Mark Millage did and other park boards have.
Thank you, Councilor. Would anybody want to make a motion?
So move, Anderson.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve these folks to serve, and it was seconded by Councilor Erickson. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 42.
Item 42 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving the naming of a facility space on public property, McNally's VIP Pub.
Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. As chairman of the City Naming Committee, we have two recommendations before you tonight. Item 42 is actually a renaming within the new event center. The City Council previously approved this space, which was on the west end of the suite level, as the McNally's Premium Lounge. The request tonight is to change it to McNally's VIP Pub. Rick Hupfen, representing SMG, is here tonight if you have any more specific questions on this sponsorship.
Thank you,
I've got
Michael.
A question.
Yes, Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, when we approve this resolution, does the resolution just last as long as our contract with them, or is this 10 years, or what is it, Mike?
Yeah, the resolution would only be in effect as long as the contract is.
Councilor?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Rolf.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson Jr. Thank you, Councilor Rolfing. They've made a motion to approve this resolution. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach? Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0. Item 43.
Item 43 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving the naming of a facility space on public property, Comfort Zone.
This afternoon, we had another exciting announcement about another major sponsorship for the new event center. As a result of that, the naming request for what would be called the Comfort Zone will be on the west end of the main concourse, the west end of the main concourse. And the sponsoring entities, Waterbury Heating and Cooling, Johnstone Supply, as well as Coleman Heating and Air Conditioning.
Thank you, Mike. Council, any comments?
Move for approval, Anderson.
I'll second again.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson Jr. Thank you, Councilor Rolfing. They've made a motion to approve this resolution. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach? Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. It's now, that was 8-0. Item 44.
Item 44, report of the July 29, 2014 Notice of Transfer of Appropriations within Major Organizational Units.
Thank you. Folks, we started this meeting with a packed house, and we're now down to 5 folks, and we want to thank you for protecting us, for serving us, and for being very engaged citizens, because it's all we got left here. And Council, I wanted to thank you too. It's now, just for the people of Sioux Falls to know, these folks started as early as, well, 4 o'clock officially, 3 o'clock officially, and it's now 9:30. So 6.5 hours later, they're getting ready to adjourn this meeting. They don't get paid a lot, not near enough, but they serve the public well. With that in mind, Council, would anybody want to go home?
I'll move. Adjourn. Second.
Councilor Karski, Councilor Chair Karski has made a motion to adjourn this meeting, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Sioux Falls. Thank you, Council. Thank you, citizens. Make it a great night.